Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 11 of the Planeswalker Pod. I'm Seth Manfield. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Danny T. Law and Jason Florent, and we've got a special guest fresh off of a top 8, or that's DaNinja. So you may have seen him piloting that 4-color control deck in Historic. Had a really nice run. We'll be talking to him shortly. He's also a member, of course, of our Planeswalker Pod team. You can find us in our Discord. And yeah, before we get going, I want to say thank you to the sponsor of the podcast. That is, of course, Cool Stuff Inc. You can find your Magic cards. You can find your collectibles. You can sell Magic cards. You can do basically anything. If you want cool stuff, go ahead, go over to coolstuffinc.com, get something, buy something, do something. Thank you to them for sponsoring our podcast. So let's go ahead. We're going to jump into things and talk about, well, we had DaNinja here on as our guest of the show. So we definitely want to jump into the Zendikar Rising Championship. That is the event that, of course, received so much hype this weekend. I was playing in it as well. Didn't have quite as great of a result, but yeah, so let's jump into it.
Welcome again, Tomasz. And yeah, our first question would be, how did you end up in the championship qualifier? Where did it start?
So, Danny, the whole thing started basically at the beginning of this year. February 2020, there was an announcement from one of the big Czech stores that they're going to be creating a new league for all the people in Czech Republic and Slovakia. And basically anybody could join free of charge. And this was kind of a year-long tournament series, which was split into 3 splits. There was a split there was a spring split, then there was a summer split, and then there was a fall split. At the end, there was also last call. And basically what this did, from all the 4 splits, there were 4 people qualifying for the grand finals, which was consisting of 16 players. And then basically the winner of that grand finals got a chance to qualify for the PT. So that was the way how I got there. I think I ended up second in one of the qualifiers, so I got into the grand finals. And then I listened to podcast from Brad Nelson, and he was thinking highly about Sultai. I just went with it, and then it got the job done. So that was how I got into the invite for the PT.
Well, it's a long run though. I mean, you started in February. That's when I started to stream. Basically, that's a long run for sure. Many games, I guess. Did also other big Czech players play there? I mean, Czech is kind of famous for having like lots of talent and good players.
Yeah, there was a lot of good Czech players. One who was playing with me basically throughout all the year was Jakub Toth, Flashjack, who's playing in the Rivals League right now. So I think that was one of the most accomplished players. But there was a lot of very, very good local players in the whole season. And the good thing about it was a year-long event, but once you qualified through one of the splits, then you basically didn't have to play anymore because you already secured the place in the grand finals. So I think I managed to do it in the second season, and then I just kind of chilled for the last one.
So it's interesting. Like, you started in February and you qualified for something in December, right? That's an interesting process.
So I want to set the stage a bit, because this is this Mythic Championship, or not Mythic Championship, Zendikar Rising Championship, was your first tournament at this level. We can call it the PT level. We can call it whatever you want to call it, but it's very rare to see someone at their first try do so well. So I think that this is something that a lot of players will aspire to, right? And if you're just kind of grinding arena, trying to get there in one of these qualifiers, Tomasz has done so essentially. So when is it that you actually first started picking up cards? Did you ever play in paper? Is it just arena? Like, what's your background in Magic?
So my background actually goes quite a long time back. I started playing in high school. I think 2002 was like the first time I ever saw a Magic card. And but to be honest, when we were playing in high school, it wasn't really high level Magic. It was just we were just jamming some cards. I remember, I think it was Onslaught was the new set, so we were playing with elves, and I loved elves, and I still do. It's one of my favorite tribal decks. So whenever there's a chance to play elves, I love to try it. But basically, that's what we were just having fun, in between the school lessons and so on. So basically, that's what was my kind of beginning with Magic. But then I did take a bit of a break. I didn't really play much during my university studies, and I think I got back to Magic in 2013 or 14 when the first game on Steam came out. It was Duels of the Planeswalkers, I think 2013 or 14, which was kind of the precursor to MTG Arena. So I was playing those games. I never really played MTGO too much. I do have an account and play a couple games, but basically this was my outlet for digital playing. So that's where I spent a little time. And then as my love to elves kind of grew, I did buy into an Legacy elves deck. So I did play some paper Magic as well. But definitely for me, mostly it's been kind of online since when I was living in a small city. Then there weren't too many opportunities to like go play paper Magic, so didn't really have the chance. But like online, you can just queue up and play with somebody. Actually, we played a lot with my friends just online with the Duels of the Planeswalkers. So there was a lot of fun had there. And then basically when I kind of got more competitive, I think was with the kind of launch of Arena, because until then I didn't really have any good like competitive outlets. There was definitely, you could play competitive on MTGO, but there wasn't really a client I enjoyed, and I wasn't really into that much too. So I just didn't really get on that. But once Arena came out, it was really similar to how the other games on Steam were looking before. So it was kind of a familiar client for me. So I liked it from the get go. And there started to be these kind of bigger tournaments there where you could just take part. And that's where I kind of decided, okay, maybe I can try this. And then, I had some mild successes. So I was like continuing with that. And then basically that led up to the start of the league. And I was like, maybe I can try this. There's no money to be paid for the entry. So maybe I can just try it. I wasn't really thinking about qualifying for anything. It was just like, I'm going to try it. But yeah, in the end, I succeeded in the grand finals, and I got into the PT. So that's kind of where I ended up.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really impressive. I never would have guessed that you were so new to the game. From playing with you, you seem to have a really good grasp on the game. I thought for sure that you were like one of us paper boomers that just like moved over to Arena.
It's nice to hear someone coming up through Arena. For me, just because I've been playing for so long, and I have a lot. I've of course developed a pretty large group of within the community, friends, acquaintances, etc. And many of them have stopped playing over the years, which is natural. Like you come and leave the game. Like you're saying, you were in the game, then you were out, then you were in. I have a similar story actually, having gone to school and then come back in after. And so you hear people not playing now because they don't like Arena, or they didn't for whatever reason. But I think there's more players who have now come into the game because of Arena. I personally enjoy it more. Yeah, Danny, Danny, of course. So the streamers, part of it might be, just you can't play some of the older formats, of course, currently on Arena, and there's going to be reasons to play one or the other, and I get that, but I'm fully I've only been playing Arena recently, and MTGO just isn't in the same. It's not on the same level as. Once you compare the two, really.
I think for me it's just the ease of. Sorry. No, maybe we probably cut this. I was going to say that for for me, the appeal of MTG Arena is just how easy it is to play. On MTGO, you have much more control, I would say, but you gotta care about all those stops, and it can be a bit daunting to like players who are newer to the client. So for me, like I did learn eventually how it works, but still, it's more comfortable for me just load up Arena and just kind of it's even the games are a bit more smoother, I think. So that's kind of why I'm more drawn to that, and it just feels more like a game than what is happening on MTGO, which is more like simulation.
Yeah, I think that's well put. I mean, imagine coming back from home after working in office, looking at Excel sheets, opening your computer, and play with Excel sheets and pictures. That is basically what it is, right? And
Right.
it was the same for me. It's the appeal, right? But there's also the counter argument: it's too flashy for some people. But I don't know. It's just out there.
Tell us a little bit about your preparation for the tournament. And that was like going into. I remember going into my first couple of big tournaments. I remember thinking things would be a lot different. I remember thinking that everyone there was going to be sort of, I don't know, like next level, and the metagame was going to be a certain way. And then I was somewhat surprised when I actually got there. But this was Pro Tour. It was a lot more people. So I'm interested to get your thoughts about your prep, and then also kind of what was different that you expected kind of going in.
Yeah, so going in, I was a bit scared or had a lot of respect for the field, so I wanted to try to get together with some other players who were maybe already a bit more experienced, so to kind of be able to pick their brains and kind of they already had some kind of heuristics on how to prepare for these tournaments. So that's something that I really wanted to try to get into some of these testing teams, and I was really lucky that basically since the beginning of the year I was kind of in contact with Simon Nielsen. And we've been kind of chatting for a couple of months. And then basically once I qualified for the PT, my first question to him was like, can I test with you? I was like, already at the beginning, I was like, can I go in with you? And for a long time, they already had kind of a set up team, so it wasn't looking very promising. But at the end, there were some changes up, and then there was a spot free for me, so I was really happy to join them. And then basically once I joined the team, there was Simon Nielsen, there was Christoph Prince, and some other like prominent Czech and American players. And really, I liked the dynamic of the team. There was a lot of back and forth, people testing different matches and different formats, because as you know, there was 2 formats in the PT, so standard and historic, so you had to come prepared for both, which is kind of daunting for maybe a newer player like me to the pro scene, trying to prepare for 2 different formats, and there's multiple different playable decks in both formats, right, to find the one which is going to have a good chance. So it was really good to have kind of a team of players where everybody was testing a different deck and then different matches, and then having kind of this collective knowledge of which decks work and which don't work as well, which kind of allowed me to audible at the last second, because I was quite high on taking Teamer into the tournament, but I also played previously with Green Food, and a lot of basically almost the entire testing team went with Green Food, and I was like, okay, you guys tested it a bunch and you have a good list, and I do also enjoy playing that deck, so I'm just gonna go with that. And in the end, I was very happy that I did, because Teamer was really good when there wasn't as much interaction in the format, but a lot of the pros were still kind of on these Dimir decks, either Control or Rogues, which do pose quite a big challenge to Teamer. And I'm really glad I went with the more straightforward kind of curve out deck, which also has a lot of like value, which I do like. I like playing decks which have a lot of value and a lot of play to them. That's why I kind of never really was looking at Gruul, because that for me, the aggressive decks for me are a bit more difficult to play than kind of the more mid-rangey decks which try to get to the late game. So that's more where I feel comfortable, and that was something that I I wanted to capitalize on like my kind of natural strengths. Didn't want to pick up an archetype where I wasn't really feel strong with and then have a poor performance because of that. I think some of the very seasoned pros, they can afford that because they've played every archetype many times in the big tournaments. But for me, I think it was the better call to just go with what I already know and try to hone my skills with that.
Yeah, you were definitely fortunate to, get on that team and to have a team that you can. I mean, that's the benefit of a testing team, right? Like you were testing one deck in Teamer, but in the end, you could just kind of relied on them for the food deck, is what it sounds like. Which is like, I think that's just smart. Like that's why you are on a team in the first place, so that you have people you can go to and those guys have have that experience and that knowledge base. And I think green food honestly was the best standard choice for the tournament. I wish I had played it. As soon as I registered my Esper deck, I was kind of like, well, I wish I had played green food. And I was actually chatting with Gab Nassif, who went 8-0 with food, of course. Like literally minutes before the deadline, where he decided to play food instead of Esper, and I was like, should I should I do it? And you always have this internal debate of like, well, what should I do? Because a lot of the preparation is that deck choice, is that gamble, and I think that players were ready for Teamer. Even if you look at the Esper list, there's now no longer. I don't even think that's a good matchup for Teamer anymore, with the additional counter spells getting put into it, and the fact that the Teamer decks are like the Obosh. The Obosh version can be kind of, somewhat easy to play against depending on lists. But anyways, I think that was a great move. Obviously, it benefited. It was very beneficial to play green food. Green food. I saw some people on Twitter kind of saying about before the tournament, saying that green food was a bad choice, and I was like, green food just seems good against everything like that. I mean, even Nassif said he was 7-0 against Teamer, which I haven't played that matchup to know that much, and that just seemed kind of unrealistic, because I'm sure that's not really how the matchup plays out. But anyways, yeah, that deck was pretty impressive to me. What about your historic choice? What did you end up going with?
So for historic, it was a bit more difficult because our testing team was quite unified under the mono green food for standard, but for historic there was a lot of different kind of ways that we were getting pulled into. I know that Simon Nielsen was really high on the aura decks from the get-go. It's kind of his forte to play these kind of aura decks, so he was really high on it, and he ended up going with it. But a lot of the team also didn't like it too much, so then there were also some people who were very, very high on the regular sacrifice decks. I think that was probably the most often, or the most people registered that from our team. But that wasn't really a deck that I was confident on playing, so that wasn't really on my shortlist to play. I was basically considering just goblins or Sultai, but having much more experience with kind of the Sultai decks, what I registered for historic, was a deck which I basically qualified with for the Pro Tour. I played that same deck in Standard, because that was a couple of months before, and it was still legal in Standard to play Nissa, to play Uro, to play Krasis. So, and that was kind of an interesting point, because the grand finals of the Czech League actually were just a week after the banning of the Teamer rec deck. Basically, the Reclamation was banned, so it was just super, super fresh metagame. And nobody basically knew what to play, because we had this big tournament for us to prepare for this grand final, and nobody knew what to take there. So it was kind of wide open, and I did go with this kind of Sultai deck, and it served me well. So then when it came time for registering a deck for this historic portion, I was like, I already have a bunch of games with a very, very similar deck to this, so I'm just gonna continue going with this. And there was another teammate, Daniel, on our team, who also went with the deck, and he basically came up with the 75 that I registered for the tournament, with the Tocatli Honor Guides in the sideboard, which I liked as a nice deck versus goblins. And basically what we had was kind of it was a 4-color deck, but basically it was Sultai in the main deck. There were no white cards in the main deck, and we had I think total of six white cards in the sideboard plus a plane. So basically our whole 4th color was in the sideboard. So whenever you were facing a sacrifice deck, you could bring in the Sharns and the planes. If you're playing against goblins, you could bring the planes and the 3 Tocatli Honor Guards. So you had that plan in the sideboard, but at the same time, your matches were a little bit better against decks where these 2 big haymakers from the sideboard weren't really that good in the main deck.
I saw many questions about Tocatli and Hushbringer. I think it would be best if you explain the difference between those 2 cards and why you went for the Tocatli.
Sorry, you cut off for me, so I didn't get the whole question.
Okay, so on Twitter and in our Discord, many people were asking about the Hushbringer and Tocatli. And what was your main decision going for Tocatli?
So these cards, obviously, they are very similar. What Hushbringer has going for it is that it also shuts off death triggers, which is a small benefit. There's some decks where it could matter. But for us, or mainly for Daniel, I have to give him credit for the list. I basically just went with what he found out. But what he said and what I agreed with was that the 3rd power, the 3rd toughness, on the Honor Guard was quite good for blocking. So basically this was our tech for goblins, right? And 1/3 will block much better than 1/2. You will not be really able to block any of those 2/2 creatures from the goblins with a 1/2. So that was one of the bigger reasons. And also a bigger reason was it kind of blocks a little bit of the interaction that the goblins can have for the creatures. So basically it turns off Cratermaker, and it makes it more difficult to kill with something like a cycled goblin, which deals damage the incinerator, or with there's the Shadow Skull Smashing, which also can kill the creatures, right? So they have to spend more mana to kill a 1/3 than they would spend killing a 1/2. So that was, I think, the main reasons. Just basically the extra toughness was the biggest reason, and then just being able to block with it, and surviving more removals was the reason why we went with that.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
I think people probably ask that question a lot because they're so used to seeing Hushbringer. They're not used to seeing Tocatli Honor Guard.
Yeah.
But which I guess that makes some sense, but just because Hushbringer is more, I think we see it as more of a staple in the historic format. But when you really think about it, your logic makes perfect sense. Like I'm not questioning it at all.
Also, I think it matters which deck you're trying to put it in, because Hushbringer has been really popular in the Aura decks, where having lifelink is also a pretty big part of it. And also, I believe it has flying, right, as well. So flying and evasion is really important for the Aura decks because they get that for free, basically, on the hate card. Whereas for our deck, we don't really care about flying that much. We don't care about lifelink that much. So it wasn't really that big of a part. So having the extra resiliency against some of the removal was more important for us. And yeah,
how much of the interaction with Uro played a part in the inclusion? Yeah,
that you would probably have to ask Daniel for the reasoning on that, but or for the percentage of how big influence that was. But definitely that's a very, very big plus of the card, because it's kind of, you're not playing it because of this effect. It's kind of a nice side effect, but it is a really nice side effect because the kind of ideal curve out you can have post board against these kind of goblin decks is you go turn 2 Honor Guard, turn 3 Uro, and the Uro, because it doesn't have the enter the battlefield trigger, you don't draw a card, you don't get in the life, but it stays on the battlefield, right? And then you can start attacking next turn. So that's a really big thing, and actually that happened, I think, once or twice during the PT for me. I went with that, and that's really good because sometimes you can even lose these longer games against goblins if you don't really have a way to pressure them. But if you can just resolve a turn 3 Uro, they just don't really have any interaction for that, and you just start attacking the next turn and drawing cards and gaining life, and that's a really good way to really close the game early before they can get any maxes going or anything like that. So So that was a big part. I think it wasn't like the main reason why we chose to play it, but it was really a good side effect and a good help in the Goblin matchup.
Turn 3 Uro. Sounds good. 3 mana, 6/6.
Yeah, I mean,
take those.
Against a deck that can't get rid of it, you're like, I mean, that's the dream against goblins. I don't see how you lose if you sequence a Tecatli into an Uro, because they can't get rid of the Tecatli realistically, not early in the game, at least, and then by the time the game is stalled out a bit, Uro's already attacked at least a couple times. So yeah, that sounds. I mean, it makes sense. I think your version. To be honest with you, I hadn't thought about putting the white cards in the sideboard. I had kind of determined that I was going to play just 3-color Sultai because I didn't really like the Sharns that much as a main deck card. We had some other options, like we had Cry of the Carnarms in the main deck, which is a good card against goblins and against sacrifice. So those were the next two most popular decks after after the Sultai build, or actually Sac was more, for whatever reason, was the most popular deck, but so anyways, I also just figured that people were going to be ready for your Sharns, like they were going to be packing Chandras or Grasps or some removal, like people, like it wasn't going to be like a couple months ago where you could show up with your Nissa or your Sharn and there just wouldn't be answers in the 75, because that was the sacrifice decks from the last historic Mythic Invitational that I won. There was like people just didn't have any answers to Nissa, but since then Yasharn has come in, and so there's more of these catch all removal spells, which makes sense. And so yeah, I think playing the white cards in the sideboard makes sense. It adds up. So I'm surprised that I guess more of your teammates didn't consider it, but at the same time, if you got there at the last minute, that's kind of what sometimes happens. It's like you can arrive at the last minute like at a really, really good list of a deck, but it also doesn't, like, because you weren't advocating for it the whole time in a testing process, your teammates aren't necessarily going to have time to actually make that switch. Like I think in our standard situation where I ended up playing Esper, had Nassif chosen to play green food one day earlier, I almost certainly would have played green food. But it happened so last minute, where I also make some decisions last minute. But I think if you make a decision last minute, it does hurt your teammates indirectly. Like it's not your fault, but it's like they cannot readjust their thinking to your decision if you made a good decision. Now, on the flip side of it, I was also testing with Eli Cassis, who audibled to Esper in Historic, and he just like, that was just a terrible choice. So like you don't always audible to good choices, right? But
Yeah, if anything, I would say the opposite is true. Like last minute switching is typically like that's like a pretty big gamble. Obviously each independent sort of spot is different. So I really wanted to get your take on the white cards in the sideboard. Would you do it again, and do you recommend it to people looking to pick up Sultai for like tournaments this weekend going forward?
Yeah, I agree with what Seb was saying. I do think that Yasharn is quite playable in the main deck. It depends on what you're expecting. So if Sacrifice is still on your mind, which I think it still should be, then having one or two of those in the main deck definitely can't hurt too much. So I don't think it's necessary to put all the big picks into the sideboard. You can just play them in the main deck. I wouldn't really recommend playing the Honor Guards in the main deck. That doesn't really make too much sense. Also, like making your opponent's Croxas come in and stay in the battlefield is not really the best place to be. But if you bring in the Honor Guards from the sideboard, and it has like this double whammy, right, where you're shutting down their until battlefield triggers, but also getting early Uros without having to escape them. That's such an important effect that I would recommend going with at least 2 or 3 of these Honor Guards in the sideboard. I think that's really good tech against Goblins, which is going to be definitely a reasonable part of the metagame. And we found in the testing that was one of the better cards we could bring against them. Also, you can have some cards, like Seth was saying, with the cries and some other sweepers. But this is kind of a more proactive way you can have. You can just slam this on the battlefield and say, okay, if you don't deal with this, then you're going to have a really tough time beating me. And you're also still playing Talthesis, right? So maybe they have their Abrades, but Talthesis then take the Abrade away, and now they don't have any answer to it, and all their Maxes are 4/4s with no text, basically. So I think it's a really strong card, and I was actually listening to Brett Nelson's podcast, and he was mentioning about his love for these hate cards, which can kind of shut down the opponent's deck, having kind of really, really high power cards in the sideboard, which I really resonate with. That's really something that I also believe in. So if you want to have some cards in the sideboard and they're going to have this big impact, I think that's a good way to go with the list.
So I think your choices make a lot of sense. I would personally like to hear more about kind of your journey in the actual tournament, because we know that your decks were good, right? I think hearing about them, both choices make total sense, like 100%. Like there's like it's like you made really good choices. But this was also this is also a big tournament for you against a lot of more experienced players. So how did it kind of feel in your run, both in the Swiss and then moving through to top 8, which is probably where most players actually got to watch your matches, was in the top 8?
Exactly. Yeah, I wasn't really covered much in the first 2 days, which makes total sense. There's a lot more known players to cover, so I was actually kind of happy about that, because I prefer to just not have the extra pressure of being featured and being watched, just to play my Magic. So that was nice thing, not to have to worry about that. But going into day one, I was respectful of how good the average player on the Pro Tour would be. Basically, it's all pro players from the pro leagues, and then the best of the best challengers, right? So I knew that it's going to be very challenging to play against these people. So I wasn't really trying to set any target for myself. Obviously, kind of on the back of my head, it was like with the 10-5, you can get back on the next Pro Tour. So that was kind of something that I would love to achieve, but it wasn't like my big goal. Like, it was something that if everything went right and I did 10-5, it would be absolutely amazing. But that was kind of my only kind of soft target that I wanted to hit. But basically what I was coming in was like, this is a great event. Let's just have fun, and let's just try to play the best Magic that I can, avoid as many mistakes as I can, and just go with it. So that was kind of my my strategy going with it. And what I've been practicing in some of the bigger tournaments before this, and what I was also trying to do for this tournament, was really take it round by round. I wasn't really looking ahead like, okay, I need to win 5 more matches to get into day 2. I don't need to win 3 more matches to get into the top 8, because I think that kind of can put some extra pressure on yourself. So I was trying to avoid any actions or any thinking that could put additional stress on me, because I already was kind of stressed out naturally because it was a big event. So anything that I could not think about to alleviate the stress from me, I wasn't thinking about it. So I was just going, okay, round 1, this is my opponent, this is what they're playing. Let's just try to play my best game, and then win or lose that, and then next round again, doing the same thing. So that was kind of my approach, and day 1 went really well for me. I ended up, I think, with 6-1, putting me on the 3rd place overall, which was really nice for me. I was really happy about that. Kind of put a little bit of the stress away of achieving something like, okay, I didn't totally flop on my first try, like this is much better than I expected. So that was a great feeling, and there was a lot of great support from the Czech community and other players that I've met through all the tournaments. So that was really great to see the support. And then I tried to have the same philosophy going into day 2, but to be honest, it was a little bit more challenging, because I already had a pretty good start from the day 1. And always at the back of your mind was like, okay, now you have a good start, so let's try to continue with this. Let's not waste this good start, because that can happen in this tournament. You start amazingly on the first day, and then on the second day you don't really have the result that you wanted, and you don't maybe get anything for your good start. So that was kind of a little bit what I was struggling with, like trying to still keep my head in it, just focus on the matches, focus on the plays, and do not think about the big picture, because that doesn't, honestly, I don't believe that helps, thinking about the big picture. I think what works for me is just to focus on the match, and then if I focus on every match and I do well in them, then I'm gonna get there in the top 8, right? I don't have to think about winning 5 in a row. I'm just gonna play one game at a time, one match at a time, and try to win. So that was kind of my overall strategy going into it, and I think that helped me definitely to kind of alleviate a bit of the stress. Like I wasn't really stressing about things which I didn't have to, so I was just focusing on my plays.
Yeah, interesting that you mentioned playing, one game at a time. That's something that I feel like, pro players have said for a long time. You've heard PT champions say that exact thing for years on years. And it's still something I think a lot of us kind of forget about, though. And it's important to just block everything else out, to help control your stress levels, your anxiety, and just focus on the task right in front of you. And I'm not surprised that by picking some very solid decks and just playing them solidly, taking it one step at a time, one game at a time, that you had the result that you did. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and also
so when I just wonder, when you went top 8, so that approach you used before top 8, or did you have the same in top 8? Because I mean, there's obviously more on the stakes, right? And you can go game by game, sure, but it must be a bit different, right, with that approach in top 8.
Yeah, so it was interesting for me because I wasn't really preparing for making top 8, right? So I wasn't really planning on that. I didn't have any kind of strategy or anything, like any mindset that I would take into top 8. So I had to kind of go and figure something on the fly. But basically, what happened for me is, ironically, maybe it wasn't as much pressure. I didn't feel as much pressure on in the top 8 as I did on day 2, because I already felt like I achieved something pretty good, So I felt like I already kind of checked my mark and did well. I got invited to the next Pro Tour, so that was already amazing. So basically, at that point, I was just trying to again play my best Magic. Obviously, there was a lot online. On the line with the prizes, the monetary payouts, right? And then of course being the champion is amazing. But that didn't really affect me too much, because at that point I already kind of hit all the marks that I wanted, and really what I kind of prohibited myself from was kind of looking at the prize payout. So I wasn't really check out how much 8th play takes and how much is the 6th place. So that wasn't really. I knew that there would be more money if you get better plays, right? But I wasn't really stressing if it was 10,000 or 5,000, because that doesn't really help. So that I took that kind of monetary incentive out of the question, out of the equation, and then I kind of repeated what I did in day 1 and day 2. I just continued playing my matches. It was kind of funny because basically my whole path in the top 8 was through professional players, right? So it was Gabriel Nassif in round 1, and then I faced against Autumn Burchett, and then I faced against Luca Magni, and I played against Andrea Minigucci, right? So those are all players from the MPL or rivals. So obviously, even though the average player on the PT is great, but these players are even a level above that. So I knew that I'm not going to get any easy games. I'm not going to get any mistakes from them. So I wasn't really trying to stress about it. Like, I'm playing against this great player, I'm just going to try to play my best game. Even the best players sometimes don't top deck the best card, right? So you can still beat them if you're playing your best game. And that was kind of my approach. So I'm not gonna lie I would lie if I did say that it didn't have any influence, but I don't think it had more influence on me than on day 2. Like, I already achieved what I wanted, and it was kind of a bonus round in the top 8, trying to go for the title.
Yeah. I think some of us are. For me, I'm remembering the match against Mengu, which was obviously your last match of the tournament. So that's that was kind of a crazy set, and but I'm glad you have that attitude about it, because it felt like, from a viewing perspective, you were ahead in games 2 and 3, and he kind of clawed back, which can happen, right? Games are swingy in that way, but that's just how it felt. Like you were gonna win, and I've been there too. I mean, I was playing against PV in the top 8 of a Pro Tour, up 2 games to 0, and with him on a mull of 5, I mean, that's probably one of my, but anyways, that's much worse than what happened with you. But I mean, yeah, he top decked his way out of it. He was able to kind of maneuver and get out of what seemed like a pretty tough situation. And I thought you were going to be moving on to top four, but things happen. That's the game. That's the game we signed up for. So,
Yeah,
it was fun. It was good TV. I thought it was fun to just
good.
watch the top eight because there was so many swings, and it wasn't like every person who you thought was going to win at the start of the game actually ended up winning, right?
Yeah, it was funny. It was like a mirror, right? People were like, oh, not again a mirror. But honestly, this was my favorite game. It was so like back and forth, and it was a mirror where everyone was like, oh, not again. But it was a really great game.
And how I got into that position to play against Andrea was by beating two mirrors earlier, right? I beat Gabriel on the mirror, and then I beat Luca on the mirror. So I was like, okay, I already played this, so it's nothing new for me, right? So I'm just gonna try to do what I did before. But as Seth said, like this was maybe something that I struggled the most with during the tournament was when you're ahead. Kind of, you're thinking, okay, I'm going to win now. It's just trying to kind of suppress this feeling like, you're already just get across the finish line, right? Because you know that you're ahead. You just need like one more card to just lock up the game. And it's so difficult to kind of bring yourself back into the game hasn't finished yet. You still have to like play your best. So it's always like whenever you have the Nissa going and you're in a good spot, it always feels like I'm almost there, right? But it can still change, and that's kind of what happened the second game, I feel like, because I had a really good start, but then I kind of drew a couple lands in a row, and Andrea played great, and he just kind of clawed his way back into it. So even if you're a lot ahead, just still keep your head in it, and just don't think you already won when there's still game to be played.
Yeah, we and it wasn't even just in your match. We saw Andrea versus Brad. We saw Brad win a game that was basically looked unlosable, and I think people have this thought process that once you slam a Nissa and you have a Nissa going, the game's over, which isn't true as we've seen. But it is such a powerful card, and it's definitely the most. I think it's the most important card in the matchup, but it's not. And there was a lot of interviews where people were saying, "Oh, just slam a Nissa and go," but that's not how it necessarily played out. There was some counterplay. There was some the Shark Typhoons, getting larger creatures than the 3/3s. I thought was pretty important just to be able to have blockers, and then sometimes if you just have a big shark, you can just go, you can just all of a sudden turn the tide.
And let's not forget about Uro, right? Because that's still a legal card, and I found in these mirrors sometimes it can be really important if one player has the Uro and the other doesn't, right? Because even if they do kill it or they gust it, you still get to replay it and escape it again. And I felt like there was one thing which kind of I was lacking in the second game. Like I had all the pressure with Nissa, but I just didn't have any. I didn't have a Crisis, I didn't have an Uro, so I didn't have the cards flowing too much in my direction. So I was thinking like maybe if I can get an Uro and escape it, then I'm gonna be in a great spot because that's already 2 cards. But yeah, without this kind of engine, which you can still keep replaying, and it's gonna be drawing you cards even if the opponent resolves it or if the opponent gets rid of it, then that's a really big part. So a lot of these games, like when the opponent goes with the Fable Passage and a Growth Spiral, right? They already have like 4 cards in the yard by turn 5. Then you can feel a lot behind because they can get an Uro like 2 turns earlier before you, and if you don't have an answer there, we've seen it in the top 8. Like sometimes you get an Uro, an opponent doesn't have a reply for like 2 turns, and it's just gonna win the game there, right? So it's still a very strong card.
I remember Mangu playing that Uro there, had 2 mana open, and I think you had a decision to do there. I think it was a Gust or something before, and then he put in the 3rd land and played Uro, and you were like, yeah, that card was an Uro. I remember that, and I was like, yeah, that's a painful one. But you don't know, right? Uro is a good card.
What's your approach for the mirror? Like, is it basically just to have as many threats as you can? Because there's this... I've always thought it's a really interesting mirror. A lot of players, I think, typically board out most of their removal spells and go towards just having your counters, your planeswalkers, and your heavy hitters. But sometimes keep figuring out what to keep in and is is a challenge because like oftentimes I find myself having more cards. Like I have too many cards that I want and not enough cards to take out.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's kind of interesting. The cards which our sub plan basically was to take out the extinction events and the pushes, right? Because we felt those are one of the weaker cards. But still, even in game one, like those cards do quite a lot of work. Like you can extinction event an Uro and it's not coming back, right? You can push an Uro if you played your Uro or had any other revolt trigger of the battlefield. These cards are really good. Event is a great permanent answer, and then push is just so efficient at 1 mana. It's just efficiency. Mana efficiency is still very, very key in most formats. So if you can remove something that costs them 5 or 4 mana for 1 mana, that's a big swing. So that was definitely something that I always was a little bit. I always had a pull to like keep maybe 1 or 2 pushes in, like because there's these situations where they have like a big shark, right, 5/5, and you have just only couple removals for a shark after boarding, right? So it was always tempting to leave in like 1 push. But overall, we decided that like the negates and the sharks were still on average better, but definitely like keeping in some pushes actually could turn out to be a pretty good like tech, which maybe some people are not expecting. They were not gonna expect that you have that single push for their creature, and they're gonna have some plays that are gonna put them in a bad spot. So you can try to next level some people like that, but because this was like my first big event, I wasn't trying to get too cute, so I just stuck to what we felt was the strongest play in most cases, which was kind of take out the spot removals and sweepers and just put in the strong counter magic and the sharks out of the board.
Yeah, totally. And I think we've highlighted a bunch of the things that I think you've done well, like kind of just sticking your guns, being things sort of straightforward. I'm curious though, like you say, you're now qualified for the next championship coming up in like 3 months. Looking back, you did so many things well. Is there anything that you think you could improve on for the next time, or things that maybe you want to do differently?
Oh, that's a long list, Jason. There's so many things that I can still improve on. So I'm not sure where to start with. But for me, I think the biggest thing that I've been struggling with ever since I kind of started playing more competitively is the clock management. I'm sure that you saw it in the matches where my clock tends to go quite low. I don't strive to play slowly. It's just something that I kind of gravitate towards, some kind of a deliberate player, you would say, kind of Nassif style, but even more to the extreme sometimes. And it's just because like I usually, to arrive to the same conclusions as these pro players do, they will need maybe 5 seconds, and I will need 15 to get there, because I need to consider all the possible outcomes, and it will just take me a bit less because I don't have as much experience. So that was kind of one downside, which it wasn't just in this tournament. I already felt it in tournaments before, and it's kind of something that I dislike, because I do like playing these kind of control mid-range decks, which do tend to take a long time. But then again, it does tend to go to these game threes when you have like 5 minutes on clock, and maybe that is a good thing for me, because I do have experience in playing it with not a lot of time on clock. So maybe it doesn't affect me as much as it did before, and it's actually something that I am actively working on. I read through like 5 different articles on how to manage your clock and how to play faster and how to not let it affect you. But still, as you can see, it's not perfect, so it still can haunt you. And in these long games, it does gravitate towards that. So that's something that's like the biggest priority for me to basically, for me, it doesn't. I don't have a goal to play fast, but I have a goal to have enough time to finish the match, right? So whenever I get to the third game and I have 3 minutes left on clock, I'm like, okay, this is not what we agreed on, Thomas. This is not how it's supposed to be going, right? You should have more time. But if I'm gonna have 5 minutes at the end of every match, I'm totally okay with that. Even if some people are going to be call me slow or anything, I don't really give much credit to that. I just want to play my Magic. But a big part of that is having enough time to close it up. And maybe I can give you a nice story here, or maybe a scary story for me, which was coming from day one, where I actually won one game with 7 seconds on the clock. And then there was another match which I won with 2 seconds on the clock. I shared it with the rest of our team. attacking with a 10-10 Barons on my opponent with lethal and having 2 seconds. So any kind of lag in the internet connection could have lost me the match there.
Yeah.
So that was a big kind of big learning curve for me from day one. I definitely tried to pick up my pace for day 2 and for the top 8. But as you can see, like if the game is super grindy and takes a long time, it can still go to time for me. So that's something that I'm trying to work on. Of course, among many other things, because I'm no pro yet, and even if you're a pro, I think there's always things you can improve, right? So there's a long way ahead of me to get to the levels of the players I played in the top 8. But this is one of the key ones that I'm trying to focus on because I feel that there's the most to be gained from that.
I also have the problem of the clock, right? Nassif said once I'm even slower than him, but I realized, and that's what I do now, is if you don't stream or something and opponent is also kind of slow, you have to use all the time opponent is thinking for thinking yourself as much efficiently as you can, right? Because when it's your turn, you already have 50% done in your head, it goes way faster, right? This is why I can play offline really fast when I stream it in the Discord, like really fast, but it's just way easier to do it that way.
Exactly. That was one of the main points that I took from the articles which I read, was like using the idle time on your opponent, because that wasn't something I was doing too much earlier. Like if opponent is sitting for 2 minutes on his turn, that's 2 minutes of your clock you can save, right? And maybe you top deck a card which you didn't expect, and it's going to change your thinking a little bit. But, you know, in 99% of cases, or in a high percentage of cases, you're going to still make the same play that you can think of on their turn. So just use the time efficiently. And also for me, which is something that I struggled with, was like taking maybe a little bit too much time in the beginning of the match. Like you have still 30 minutes. Why not think about which land you're going to play, right? So that's something that I'm trying to make a bit more quicker. You know, these kind of routine things, which 90% of time you're going to make a certain call. Just try not to overthink them. Obviously, you don't want to be making mistakes. Sometimes playing a different land can be a big swing later on in the game. But like trying to speed up these kind of routine calls, and then having enough time at the end.
It's also interesting. I remember, I think, during the broadcast, I think you were like on 11 minutes and they hovered your minute there and you were like 1-0 ahead. And they were like, oh, okay, well, there's only 11 minutes left, but if you win that game, I mean, it doesn't matter, right? So that's also something, right?
Yeah.
If you focus enough, maybe you win the second game, and if you don't, you maybe lose it, and then you get in a more trouble situation. The clock management is really... It looks small, but it's actually bigger, right?
Yeah, it is. I used to have more of trouble. I still have some trouble with clock management, but it's been something that I've gotten better with it as I've played more and more, and I think that's natural. But it's also something worth being very aware of. Because you are just going to naturally have these longer games, and you can't necessarily control when you're going to have a long game, especially if you're playing the type of deck that is prone to playing a long game. You're not playing a red aggro deck, right? So like you're playing, if you're in a matchup, like for me, I was playing Esper Mirrors, and I was playing Esper against Rogues, and these matchups that are just... You can tell that those Esper mirrors, they're not going to end quickly, right? So like those are the types of those are the types of matchups where if you choose a deck like that, you really want to be ready. You want to have some of those thought processes, have them. If you played, once you play a deck more, sometimes you're more familiar with spots, so you can. So you don't have to think about them as much, I guess.
It's also really interesting. Remember when we had Austin here and he was talking about it? Like he had like all the lines so in his head. He was like, and meanwhile he was spamming his keyboard. Right. I think he has the most impressive time management I've saw so far with decision trees.
Yeah, you're talking about to set full control constantly.
Yeah, while doing all that. And
I do think it's more often the case that people play too quickly, though, without actually thinking through enough. So that's more common than actually timing out. I mean, you do have 30 minutes, which it's more time on Arena than you would have in a paper game, because for paper you have to shuffle, you have to do all of these things between matches, so it's actually much less time. So like if you were, that's a different scenario where Like Arena, I think everything is fair game. You have your time clock, your opponent has your time clock, and you have the, you're allowed to do whatever you're allowed to take the time that you want because it's a game. But if you go into a paper game like a Pro Tour, you really should be playing at a similar pace to your opponent because that's just because there's no clocks. So that's kind of how it's, that's fair. So you have to be prepared for that. I think if you're one of the slower players to think about if you do end up doing that. I think it's a different game. It's
totally
a
different.
Game.
Yeah. And for me, I was an Arena player, and I was like, this January, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to a PTQ. I'm gonna try this. And pre top 8, there was a clock, right? And when we entered top 8, there was no clock anymore. And my round went 2 hours. It was Azorius against Azorius. It was like 2 hours 20. All the other players finished this, right? And I was like, and they were stressing me, and it was stressing me big time. I think I did a mistake in the end because like you can feel like the people getting angry and getting nervous and getting, hey dude, play, but the rule says there's no time here. I can use that time, right? And I was not that experienced back in the day, and it feels really different. It's completely different for me.
Yeah. I'm curious, do you guys use like auto pay on Arena to play for spells, or do you have it turned off?
I do. I use autopay all the time, but
I think there's a trick, right? You can take your card and put it up, and you
see
how it
where
taps,
it lands.
Right? Yeah, that's how I do it.
Or if it's a specific, like sometimes I will be more thinking about going to full control or like how I tap my mana. I'll be doing those things more if I feel comfortable my time. But certainly if I'm feeling like if I'm just playing a ladder match, I auto pay all the time because it's just easier. But if I'm playing like one of these tournaments, I'll also be thinking about like how I tap my mana can sometimes give a tell based on what I have in hand. So sometimes
And sometimes it's really annoying. You take your card and you put it on. It's like, why does it tap like this? Now I have to do it manually. Right. Like, and then they know, right? It's so annoying.
I don't do that for high stakes. Yeah.
It's.
I do it the same game as you guys said. Like, I do like the auto pay because, especially for me, if I'm already having issues with the time, I can't really be messing around with auto tapping for every spell. So I do it as Denny said. Basically, I just drag the card, and you can see what's highlighting the colors on the lands. So that's a really good. So I always pay attention which kind of lands it's trying to tap, but a lot of percentage of the time is going to be tapping the correct one. But sometimes you're just like, why? I don't need this white source. I have no white cards in my whole main deck. So why are you trying to give me this white mana, right? But especially if you're playing
it happens
like Uro, it can be really important to have like double greens, double blues, right? So be paying attention to that.
Uro, or even like adventure cards when you can maybe play the second side, or like disputes is the classic, right? Dispute is the absolute classic where it just auto taps and you go like, well, no, that doesn't work for me.
And also, as Seth was saying about auto tapping, sometimes in these high level tournaments it can be nice, like because you can try to represent a card. You shouldn't be doing it every turn, obviously, because then they can read through it. But if you have a key turn where you want to represent a certain counterspell and you're aggressively tapping your green sources and leaving a blue mana, even though you don't have it, it can, it's just EV plus, right? It's giving you extra value because it doesn't cost you anything, and maybe they're gonna overthink it and just play something different just because you tap your land, right?
Or you do it the other way around, right? You just the first 2 times where you don't care about the card turn 4 or 3, you tap your blue mana, and then you don't turn 5. That's the big mind game there, right?
All right.
Yeah, I did that once with I had an egg, and I purposely tapped out a blue so that I could sack the egg to counter something with my dispute. So one last thing though. Okay, so when you guys are saying that you're using auto tapper, so I've turned auto tapper off. But there's still, like, if you drag a spell onto the stack, you can just click the auto pay button. And if you hover over that, it's the same thing. It'll show you which lands And so I use that now because sometimes I would accidentally it would just cast the spell, or I'd let go of the mouse, or something like that. And then also, if you just need to tap, you can just tap, and it's only maybe an extra second or a couple seconds. I haven't found that it slows me down that much. So worth a try, worth checking out.
Also, something that I found out playing in Arena, you do get awarded for a certain prowess with the client. I noticed, for example, I saw Jason you playing some week ago, and there was I think maybe a small glitch when you click on a certain card and you bounced a different card with the Brazen Borrower than you were intending.
Oh yeah.
I'm not saying that was a misclick, but if you're trying to pay extra attention to what you're clicking, sometimes in these long tournaments, you tend to go in these auto modes and you just click the decline when you're thinking about okay or something. So that's something that I was actually a bit mindful about in these, especially in the top 8. I was trying to make sure that I was clicking the right buttons every time. I want to pay 2 life, on just making extra sure that I was clicking the right card, because you don't want to go out of the tournament because you clicked wrong. And if you're playing several hours in a row, then it can be really easy to miss a thing.
There's a classic that happens to streamers: the block and damage click. You want to do something, and then you thought it's just the block, but it was already the damage, and whoa, where they hit me. It happened to me before when you're talking and you're focusing. But if you focus, you really should watch the clicks. I think that's important. Yeah.
And also one general tip I would give, which I think it'll be quite relevant for a lot of people, if you're activating some ability or playing some spell which is going to give you a couple cards to choose from, for example, Fable Passage, don't open your graveyard or some other zone which can also give you a closeout button, because what happens sometimes is that you, for example, crack your passage and then you check your graveyard, what already lands you have in your graveyard. And then when you click OK to close the graveyard, it also will double close the window with the Fatal Passage, right? So every time you're kind of going for something, try to think through it before you activate the card or play the spell. Because once you do, you can easily, I've seen this even in the Pro Tour happen, when people just did this and they just basically stone drain themselves because they didn't find the land that they were hoping for. And that can have a huge impact on the game, right? So try to always
That's a big one.
think through that's something that I also was using. Try to think through your lines before you even start a turn. And even before you activate the passage, try to already have an idea what you're getting before going for that.
Totally. Great public service announcement. Okay, well, I think that's all of it for us. I want to thank Tomas for coming on the show. Thank you so much. Congrats again on your performance. Really impressive. Going to be rooting for you in the next one. Going to be excited to watch your matches. And thank you also to Cool Stuff Inc. for sponsoring our podcast and throwing down Cool Stuff Inc. Cash for our tournaments. We have another one coming up soon. And with that, say goodbye.
Thanks for having me, guys.
I'm so happy because, of course, to see DaNinja, who is a member of our Discord community. So seeing someone break through on this stage, I think, hopefully helps inspire everyone else. And I don't know, who knows? But awesome job.
Yeah, thank you for having me, guys. And I just wanted to say thank you to the whole community. And I think that's a good maybe advice for people. Try to just surround yourself with more people and more friends, more people you can play with and get some feedback from. Because for me, that was so overwhelming, because I'm not a known player or anything in the larger scope of things. But I felt a lot of support, not only from the Czech players, but from people from our Discord and from people from all around, which I played throughout multiple tournaments. So it's really good to have kind of the support and the kind of general knowledge and shared knowledge with other people who can help you, because you don't have infinite time and you can't test every match. So if you can have some extra knowledge from some other people and have you support you during these tournaments, it can be a great tool to use. So find your friends and cherish them.
Totally.
Well spoken.
All right.
Awkward sign off.
In 3,
All right.
2, 1. Seth Manfield played Esper. Bye, guys.
That was a good one.